Today's lecture, we're going to focus on discuss MM theory. MM theory, initially proposed by two financial economists, they both later on won Nobel Prize in economics. Their major contribution is they studied modern corporate finance. So MM theory is the one relates to capital structure theory. So we're going to break into different cases. The case number one is the most simple one. We assume there's a perfect capital markets, there's no corporate tax, and no bankruptcy costs. For the second case, we're going to add back corporate tax. We still assume there's no bankruptcy costs. So last one, we're going to add back bankruptcy cost back to our discussion. Under a perfect capital world, there's no corporate tax. We don't even worry about the bankruptcy. So what's going to happen? Will our capital structure choice matters? Will capital structure choice affect the cost of equity? So each set of the MM theory has two propositions. Proposition 1 answers the question, what's the effect of leverage on firm value? Proposition 2 answers the question, what's the effect of capital structure on cost of equity? Under a world there's no corporate tax, MM theory proves that the capital structure does not matter. They use a homemade leverage strategy. Basically, investors, they are able to replicate the earning per share they want under any capital structure choice. If the manager tries to boost stock price by changing capital structure, it's not going to affect them. They can achieve this by themselves. The capital structure choice does not matter. The firm's value stay constant under any capital structure choice. In addition, this predicts firm's discount rate, WACC, stay constant. Whether you have zero debt or more debt, the firm's discount rate stay constant as well. Let's take a look at this one example. Company's an all-equity firm currently has 80,000 shares of stock. Now they're considering a restructuring. Basically, borrow 600,000 at 9% to buy back 12,000 shares. What's the value of the firm? So how do we solve this question? Recall from the MM Proposition 1 without corporate tax. We know firm's value will be the same under any capital structure choice. For unlevered version, the value of firm basically is how many of shares multiplied stock price per share. But we don't know how much is stock price. Then read the question again. We notice company purchased 12,000 shares, use $600,000. This implies how much is stock price per share? 600,000 over 12,000. So each stock was $50 per share. Then go back to our question. How many shares we have? Under all equity version, we have 80,000. So value of unlevered firm equal to 80,000 shares total. Each one was $50. So which implies $4 million. So what is firm value? Before after the capital restructuring, firm value is the same, $4 million. So that's proposition 1. Firm's value is same, firm's discount rate WACC is same. Proposition 2 answers the question, what's the effect of leverage on cost equity? Proposition say cost equity depends on the two components. One is WACC, cost capital. The other is based on the debt equity ratio. So this is difference between WACC and the cost of debt, which is normally always greater than 0. So what does this tell us? What's the effect of leverage on cost equity? We know this is always positive increasing. So cost equity is going to increase when we have higher debt equity ratio, while firm's WACC stays constant. This also implies equity risk depends on two things. One is the discount rate WACC, which captures the business risk. Another is the equity ratio is financial risk. So what is business risk? Basically, any change which will affect firm's operations, firm's business strategy. For example, Starbucks plans to introduce personal pizza into their menu. That's something new. Will this affect their business? Yes, it's type of business. Costco is going to change its leverage ratio from 30 to 35. What are risk? Financial risk. Amazon acquired Whole Foods. So this is the difference between business risk and financial risk. Suppose the required rate of return on assets is 16%. Cost of debt is 10%. Percent of debt is 45%. What is cost equity? So use formula cost equity equal to discount rate on assets 16% plus the discount difference between discount and cost of debt 10 times the equity ratio. Percent debt is 45. Percent equity means 55, right? 100% minus 45. So this will give us the answer 20.91%. So that concludes our case number 1, MM theory without corporate tax. For case number 2, we try to make it more realistic. Basically, in practice, we cannot ignore corporate tax. Even Trump dropped the corporate tax, we still have to pay. So we're going to revisit these 2 questions. What's the leverage effect on firm value? What's the leverage ratio effect on cost equity? Proposition 1 under corporate tax. Value of levered capital structure is greater than unlevered version. Why? Because when you borrow more, you're going to save more from interest tax shield. So this term, additional term, describe how much more value you're going to be added from the borrowing due to interest tax shield. What are the implications? Number 1, capital structure choice matters, right? So to maximize interest tax shield, as there's no bankruptcy costs, optimal capital structure is going to put on 100% of debt. Sounds crazy? While we notice the WACC is going to go down when we have the equity ratio, higher debt equity ratio. So what exactly is interest tax shield? So basically, when you borrow money, you pay interest tax. You pay interest payment. The interest payment is deducted from taxable income. The more interest expenses you pay, the more tax you're going to save. So this is a interest tax shield. So how do I find out the interest tax shield? For the annual amount, basically, it is the annual interest payment times the tax rate. So if we have this amount saved every single year, in the long run, we're going to add more value to the firm. So this is called present value of interest tax shield. So we simply use amount of debt times tax rate. Let's practice. For the annual tax shield, our debt borrowing is $62.50. We're paying 8% cost of debt, and our tax rate is 34%. So this gives us $170. So how much is the present value of this amount if we are able to save $170 every single year? So this is going to create a value addition of $62.50 times 34%, which is $21.25. Here I include another practice for calculating interest tax shield, the annual and the present value of this interest tax shield. Proposition 2. What's the leverage effect on cost equity? The formula is very similar to the version under no corporate tax. It's also based on 2 terms. Here I want to point out we have a special return. It's called R sub U. So what is R sub U? Well, we no longer use RA or WACC. RU is a special cost capital, which is a cost capital for an unlevered capital structure version. The overall implication of cost equity is also similar. The higher the leverage ratio, the higher cost equity. The main difference now, this line is slightly become flatter as we have adjusted factor to reflect the corporate tax effect. Main implications. Cost equity increases as leverage increases. Cost equity again depends on two type risk, business risk and financial risk. Let's take a look at this example. We start with an all-equity firm generates a perpetual cash flow of EBIT 25 million every year. Cost of unlevered equity is 12%. Companies considering a capital restructure plan to borrow $75 million at 9% to repurchase stocks. Tax rate is 35%. What is the firm value under unlevered capital structure? What's firm value under capital restructuring? Corporate cost equity and WACC. So we do one by one. For value of unlevered cost capital. So for perpetual cash flow, firm value equal to cash flow over discount rate. As firm's net profit, net income based on EBIT minus the tax payment. And the discount rate is R sub U. So let's work on the first step. What's the value of unlevered capital structure? So the given EBIT is 25 million every single year. Tax is 35%. RU is 12%. So this gives us the firm value on the unlevered equal to 135. Now move on to firm value of levered capital structure. According to MM Proposition 1 with corporate tax, this is basically the unlevered version plus the present value of interest tax shield. So we could use unlevered 135, 42, plus we borrowed the debt $75 million, tax is 35. So we got the total firm value now is 161.67. So if you look at the two pie, so this one represented the unlevered version, this is the levered version. So when you add more debt, you notice the total size, the firm value is different now. Increased from 135 to 161. So how much is the equity after we finish capital restructuring? As debt is 75, the total is 161. Can you tell me that what's the value of equity after restructuring? Yes, it is just subtraction. So we got equity value is now become 86.67. We need to now answer the question, what's the cost of equity and the WACC? So we're going to use Proposition 2 under MM with corporate tax. So this requires information on cost of unlevered, the equity ratio, tax, cost of debt. Unlevered is 12, that is 9%. That equity ratio, we borrow 75, equity from step 2. We got equity is 86.67. Tax is 35. So this will give us cost of equity is increased from 12% to 13.69. Last step is find out the WACC. So we have total firm value and debt equity, so we can figure out proportion of debt, proportion of equity. Equity 86.67, total firm value 161.67, cost of equity is 39, that is 75, total 161.67, cost of debt is 9%, tax 35. So this gives us the WACC is 10.05. So as you see, WACC go down from 12 to 10.05. Now, what will happen if firms change capital structure so that the equity ratio become 1, which is 50%? The only thing we have to change is the equity ratio. Cost equity is 13.95. What happened to our WACC? The WACC go down to 9.99. So I would like you to do another practice that's very similar. So we have company has debt, and that has cost of 6%. The EBIT is 2100, tax is 30%, unlevered cost capital is 11.7%. So I want you to pause a moment, practice. First, you find out unlevered firm value, then figure out the levered version, and find out the equity value, and do cost of equity. When you finish, resume your video check your number. So let's conclude our case number 2. We notice leverage is going to affect our capital structure, and we prefer leveraged capital structure. And the optimal capital structure will be 100% in that. We also notice cost equity also increase with the equity ratio. Now let's move on to case number 3, when we add back bankruptcy cost. In reality, we don't see company with 100% debt, not even close. A lot of companies stay away from that. Why? Because if you loaded with too much debt, if you cannot pay interest payment, you may go bankruptcy. So when the leverage ratio increases, the possibility of bankruptcy also increases. It's also going to increase expected bankruptcy costs. There are 2 types of the costs associated with bankruptcy. One is direct, the other is indirect. So direct costs are example of you hire lawyers to pay the legal fees, administrative fees. So this looks expensive in Aaron's case. It's more than $1 billion. But the actual, it is about 1 to 5% of the firm's value. But the bankruptcy image is bad, negative. Customers pause. Should I buy GM's truck if they were filing for bankruptcy? Can they back up their service? What about the parts and the replacement? So due to the possibility of bankruptcy, the reduction in the sales could have a far more impact on firm's value. This tend to be around in the range of 10 to 20% of the firm value. Altogether, both direct and indirect, we name it called financial distress. When we increase the debt equity ratio, financial distress possibility increases. I'm now going to introduce you a few of the modern capital structure theory. The first one is trade-off theory. So this theory says a company should select the equity ratio based on the pros and cons of debt financing. So the benefit of the debt is you have tax shield. The cost is when you had more debt, the financial distress cost increases. So you're going to weigh in the pros, cons, and going to pick the equity ratio, which is going to maximize firm value. So implication of this capital structure theory is each company has an optimal amount of debt. We also name it a target debt equity ratio. And if company deviate away from this debt equity ratio target, they will bounce them back. The second popular or competing capital structure theory is called pecking order. This is based on the asymmetric information. Due to asymmetric informations, when you go out to raise money, investors don't know what's going on with the company. They may actually charge more returns, make it more expensive. So the recommendation is companies should first use internal funds to fund your investment. After that, if you go out to raise external money, use your debt capacity. If you use up your debt capacity because it becomes too expensive to borrow, then the last resort is equity financing, because this is the most expensive. Not only you have to hire the underwriters, and also due to asymmetric information, and firms tend to pay a lot more. The implication of this pecking order theory, there's no target the equity ratio. Internal funds has value, firms appreciate internal cash reserve. That's why they don't pay out all the money as cash dividend. They retain and plow back. Rich companies, they tend to borrow less. Why? There's no need. They have huge internal fund inside. So there's a long debate, pecking order theory versus trade-off theory. A huge empirical studies devoted to try to prove which one is better. So this is still ongoing debate, but we do find evidence to support both theories. Another capital structure theory we're mentioning is market timing theory. It is one type of behavior finance theory. If you're familiar with behavior finance, you probably heard of these two names, Berger and Wegler. So the theory proposed firm does not really care about cost when they choose the mixture whether they should go out raise equity or debt. They only care about which one cheaper. Sometimes there's like a hot, have you heard of a hot period, hot IPO, hot equity period, hot debt period? So which means it's cheaper for a company to sell stock if it's a hot equity period. So vice versa, if it's a hot debt period, you probably use more debt. If the cold equity period, you may want to buy back stock. So these are three capital structure theory. And to summarize, in the case of a bankruptcy, Tradeoff, Pecking order theory are the two top popular capital structure theory. Thank you for today's lecture.